Australians go to the polls to choose their next leader. No consensus on Syria at G20 summit. And locally, tough measures to cool the property market to stay in place.
Good evening. Australians went to the polls today to vote in a federal election. The Conservative coalition, led by the Liberal Party, is expected to end 6 years of Labor rule. That's according to opinion and exit polls. And that would pave the way for opposition leader Tony Abbott to become the country's next prime minister. Official results are not yet out, but two senior Labor lawmakers now say their party has lost the election. Alan Booknia has our top story.
Both leaders were heckled as they went to the polls. Liberal National Coalition leader Tony Abbott ran on a platform of reining in government spending, stopping the flow of refugee boats arriving in Australia, and scrapping an unpopular tax on carbon emissions. Abbott was once dubbed unelectable by a former boss. He was also called a sexist and misogynist by former Prime Minister Julia Gillard. Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, meanwhile, has seen his stock fall since ousting Gillard as Labor leader in June. She had ousted him in a similar party coup 3 years earlier. The public became increasingly frustrated amid years of party instability and bickering, and there was widespread hatred of the carbon tax on major polluters that saw prices at the cash register go up. Turnout among the more than 14 million eligible voters was extremely high. And that's because people are fined if they don't vote.
I voted for the Libs because how you could give the Labor Party a vote in this country after what they've done over the last 6 years is just a joke, you know. On the waste alone, the money they've wasted alone, it was enough for me.
I voted Labor today because I just believe in social justice, and I just hope that they have a broader social, more lenient to social policy to help people who in need.
I've always supported the Labor candidate, but the way things are going now, I've swung over to Liberal. I think we'll get a better deal.
Alan Booknia, TVB News.
Australians living in Hong Kong have been voting in their consulate here. Officials say turnout's been quite good.
The culture in Australia is for people to actively vote and to want to vote. So we make voting facilities available to all Australians overseas through all of our consulates, high commissions and embassies. And the pattern over the last few elections has been that the largest number of votes taken at any individual polling booth is at the High Commission in London is number one, the consulate in Hong Kong is number two, and believe it or not, more people actually vote here than any individual polling booth anywhere in Australia, anywhere in Sydney or Melbourne. So there's a big concentration of Australians, particularly in London and Hong Kong, and our experience has been that they like to come out and vote on election day.
At the close of the G20 summit in Russia, U.S. President Barack Obama admitted drumming up support for a military strike in Syria remains an uphill battle. Moscow and Washington are still sharply at odds over the Syrian conflict. As the G20 summit wrapped up, President Obama made one last pitch to garner support for launching a military strike on Syria. He said when it comes to killing innocent people with the use of chemical weapons, he stands by his decision to stop the Syrian regime from committing such atrocities.
There are a whole bunch of decisions that I make that are unpopular, as you well know. But I do so because I think they're the right thing to do. And I trust my constituents want me to offer my best judgment.
But Russian President Vladimir Putin hit back. He reminded those at the G20 meeting that the use of force against a sovereign state is possible only if done in self-defense. And he made it clear Syria is not attacking the United States. The UN envoy to Syria is adamant Washington should back off unless it obtains UN approval.
And international law says that no country is allowed to take the law into their hands.
France was the only country that said it stands ready to strike alongside the U.S.
Nous allons maintenant attendre.
In fact, French President Francois Hollande said chemical weapons proof and U.S. congressional approval will seal that deal. While Britain's parliament did not back a U.S. strike, its prime minister supports the idea in principle.
And I will support his efforts to build international support for upholding the international taboo against the use of chemical weapons.
All was not lost concerning Syria. The White House says the U.S. and 10 other countries pledged support for an international prohibition on the use of chemical weapons. They include Japan, South Korea, the UK, and France. Saying the U.S. will go it alone if need be, Obama plans to address Americans on Tuesday in the hopes Congress will return a favorable vote upon returning from their summer recess. Now, when it comes to a military strike against Syria, the Obama administration insists sending U.S. military troops is not part of their plan. While no definitive decisions have been made, the U.S. president has now proposed a new plan of attack that calls for hitting Syria even harder. Here's NBC News with more on that angle.
For the first time, the Pentagon's looking at using long-range bombers for potential airstrikes on Syria. B-2 stealth bombers flown all the way from Missouri, B-52s from Louisiana, and B-1 bombers based in Qatar. All able to launch cruise missiles or GPS-guided bombs from long range, well outside of Syria's anti-aircraft defenses. The U.S. military's also been ordered to come up with a longer list of potential targets, aimed at destroying more of Syria's chemical weapons program than first planned, and sending a tougher message to President Bashar al-Assad, sitting on more than 1,000 tons of chemical weapons.
Although Assad used more chemical weapons on August 21 than he had before, he has barely put a dent in his enormous stockpile, and the international community has clearly not yet put a dent in his willingness to use them.
The U.S. Navy already has 4 guided missile destroyers in the eastern Mediterranean, armed with more than 150 cruise missiles aimed at some 50 military targets inside Syria. And the Nimitz carrier battle group with 4 guided missile ships on standby in the Red Sea. Critics claim, however, the president's announced strategy for a limited attack that would only diminish Syria's chemical weapons capabilities would have no lasting impact and only draw the U.S. into a larger war.
If we start going down this road, we are going to wind up getting sucked in, if only because this is probably not the last time that the regime is going to use chemical warfare agents, no matter what we do.
But even this latest position from the president has come under fire. Military officials here claim that the president's harder line looks more like a political strategy than a military one, aimed primarily at winning votes in Congress.
To local news now, the government is standing firm on keeping in place tough measures to cool the property market. Housing Chief Anthony Chung made clear they could help prevent an asset bubble. Ronnie Samtani has more.
Real estate agents are unhappy with the market cooling measures, saying they've affected their livelihood. They plan to step up their opposition by refraining from placing ads in newspapers on Monday. Despite growing calls to withdraw those measures, the Secretary for Transport and Housing said today the government does not plan to do so.
They are intended to stabilize the property market, to reduce the asset bubble risk, because it is not just about the property market, but any undue turbulence will affect our macroeconomic and financial stability.
As for reports that the government is studying the long-term use of a 16-hectare site in Phan Linh that used to house the Queen's Hill Barracks, the housing chief said Hong Kong urgently needs to boost land supply, so he welcomes all usable land. But he said the future of the site, which has been earmarked for a private university, lies in the hands of the Education and Development Bureaus. Along with the housing target of 470,000 units over the next 10 years, the Long-Term Housing Strategy Steering Committee has proposed the licensing and regulation of subdivided flats.
Of course, there are other members who are concerned about the side effect of whatever licensing or registration measures to be introduced. That is why in our consultation document, we say that this is something for exploration.
With the public consultation offering an opportunity to gather different suggestions to find the best workable option, Chung said he looks forward to having the public express their views on proposals, which they can do from now until December 2nd. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
Opponents of government plans to develop the Hung Shui Kiu area in the new territories made their voices heard today during a public forum. Some say officials have not unveiled a concrete plan, and they're worried about the future of residents there. Evelina Lung reports.
Say no to directionless land grab. More than 100 people who are against the development plans chanted outside the forum venue this afternoon. The government wants to build some 60,000 residential homes in the area. But these protesters say their livelihoods will be affected as a result. Has the government taken into consideration the future of the people who are working in the area? This one asked. They operate outdoor warehouses there. If the government is to repossess the land, where will these people work? He asked. Meanwhile, about 500 people attended the forum inside. This non-Indigenous resident said people living in other areas where the government plans to develop could stay put following the completion of the projects. But no one knows if this is the case for Hung Shui Kiu residents. The head of the Two Moon Rural Committee, Junius Ho, says residents are demanding reasonable compensation. However, there were also those who support the plan. This landowner said he is interested in working alongside with the government to develop residential homes in the area. A government representative who also attended the forum stressed it will gather more opinion before coming up with a concrete plan for the development area, but admitted it is inevitable that some residents will be affected. Construction of the project could begin in 2019 at the earliest. Evelyn Lang, TVB News.
And still to come on the broadcast tonight, safety concerns about Guangdong nuclear power plant. Dennis Rodman calls Kim Jong-un his friend for life. And Li Na loses in the U.S. Open semis.
Welcome back. The Taishan nuclear power plant in Guangdong province will start operating at the end of this year. Experts maintain the technology used there is safe. But as Vicky Kung reports, some green groups have called for greater transparency.
A request for more information. Green groups submitted a petition to organizers of a conference on the Taishan nuclear power plant held at City University today.
Nuclear safety transparency in China and France is in different level. In France or European country, we can find a lot of detailed reports of how they solve the problem. However, in China, we can find none of it.
Some have raised concerns about the technology used at the Taishan plant, saying it has not been tested before. But experts assured the public that Chinese and European authorities have found no problems with the hardware design. They insist the design is safe and that problems experienced in Europe were caused by miscommunication among workers hired from different countries.
They have something like 5 different languages, spoken in the workplace. I understand that actually have created some defects, so they need to stop and sort of like fix the problems.
As the current reporting mechanism involving incidents only covers the Daya Bay nuclear plant, Look also called for the extension of the system to all nuclear reactors near Hong Kong. Previous nuclear power plants were designed to operate for 40 years, but the Taishan power plant is expected to stay in service for 60 years, starting this December. Vicky Kong, TVB News.
The information technology sector lawmakers raised doubts about government plans to reallocate some of the 3G mobile spectrum being used. Charles Mock also asked why the Communications Authority is pushing for competition in telecommunications but not free-to-air TV. Diane Toh has more.
The plan is to take back 1/3 of the 3G spectrum being used by each of the 4 existing network operators and auction it off to try to create more competition. According to the government, users will experience service degradation of at least 9%, or up to 27% according to a study commissioned by the mobile operators. Speaking to TVB News today, IT sector legislator Charles Mok questioned just how much good the extra competition will ultimately bring, given that Hong Kong is already one of the most competitive places in the world for the 3G market.
How much more we can get from this competition before we get to a situation where there is actually over-competition, which means that companies might be duplicating their investment, not to the benefits of the users. They do not have a sizable market in order to get an economy of scale and so on. So ending up that users might actually suffer in terms of this quality of service and their prices.
He suggested Hong Kong take reference from Britain, where the government allows existing operators to keep the spectrum they have, but renegotiates the terms so as to better protect consumer interest. Mok also questioned why the government is pushing ahead with the renewal of mobile network licenses, which is due in 2016, when the free-to-air television licenses expire in 2015.
The current discussion about 3G re-auction and this reallocation really opens up another big question in our mind, is that whether or not the regulatory regime for the telecommunications is consistent with the regulatory regime for television.
Mok complained that the government skipped a consultation process and circumvented lawmakers by planning to release its report on the 3G auction plan next month and announce a decision at the same time. Diane To, TVB News.
The police chief says it's not surprising the force was given a service award given how good Hong Kong's public order is. At the Police Academy graduation parade today, Andy Cheung defended the award given to the force by the Civil Service Bureau yesterday. Called on people to look at how safe Hong Kong is and said it's reasonable for the team's hard work to be acknowledged. His comments came after State Leader Zhang Dejiang praised the city's disciplinary forces in Beijing earlier in the week.
A massive signboard fell on a private car in Sham Shui Po today. The 5-by-1 meter signboard had been attached to a building on Fuk Wing Street. It fell on the vehicle at around noon. No one was injured, and police say there were no suspicious circumstances behind the incident.
Former American professional basketball star Dennis Rodman has called North Korean leader Kim Jong-un his friend for life. Rodman was speaking in Beijing after wrapping up a visit to the north.
I'm doing this game here, international game here in North Korea with their team and my team. And then one thing, hopefully that they can do some really good stuff. He's my friend for life. I don't care what you guys think about him.
Rodman also rejected calls to lobby for the release of American Kenneth Bae, who's been sentenced to 15 years hard labor in North Korea for engaging in hostile acts against the state. The former NBA player said the fate of the Christian missionary was none of his business. Pyongyang said Kim and Rodman held talks and watched a basketball game together during the visit. Security is tight in Indian-controlled Kashmir as world-renowned conductor Zubin Mehta prepares, that is, to hold a concert there. Mehta will conduct the Bavarian State Orchestra in the performance tonight. Security forces have been on high alert after separatist groups called for protests against the concert by the Indian-born conductor. Speaking ahead of the concert, Mehta stressed music is the message of peace. He also brushed aside the controversy over his decision to hold the event in the disputed region. Mehta said, "I didn't choose Kashmir. Kashmir chose me."
People in the Maldives went to the polls today as the island nation votes in a presidential election. Incumbent president and candidate Mohammed Wahid Hassan voted early in the day in the second multi-party election ever held in the Maldives. He came to power in February 2012. This followed the controversial ouster of former President Mohammed Nasheed, the first to be elected democratically. Nasheed is also running this time around. There are two other candidates, and all four feel they have a chance to win. If no one gets more than half of the ballots in this round of voting, there will be a second round held.
All right, Chris, what do you have for us in sports today?
We got time to go home for Li Na, is what we have. The U.S. Open, China's Li Na was no match for defending champion Serena Williams. Williams dropped only 3 games on the way to booking a spot in the final. Jameson Wong has more.
She's just that good. Serena Williams took the first set against the number 5 seed without dropping a game. Lee was able to get on the scoreboard in the second after 40 minutes on court against the top seed. And Lee made the American work to close out the match. The defending champion needed 7 match points to wrap it up 6-love, 6-3.
I think I started out really well and I was really focused. I think Li Na may have been a little off, but I think it was because I started out so well, and then she may have not played her best, but I think she played well, and I thought it was especially towards the end, a very quality match.
The event was come to semis, still was pretty good. So I was happy, after even doesn't matter win or lose the match, you still, you can face to what you should do for next step.
The women's final will be a repeat of last year's championship match as second seed Victoria Azarenka beat Italy's Flavia Pennetta in straight sets 4-2. Williams holds a 12-3 record against Azarenka, but the Belarusian has won 2 of the last 3 times that they've met. Jameson Wong, TVB News.
England moved to the top of their World Cup qualifying group after thrashing Moldova 4-0 at Wembley. Danny Welbeck scored twice in a rout. Steven Gerrard and Ricky Lambert were the other goal scorers. England play Ukraine Tuesday. Welbeck will miss the match in Kiev after being booked before the break. Daniel Sturridge and Wayne Rooney also expected to be unavailable because of injuries. Meanwhile, Costa Rica defeated the United States 3-1 in San Jose. The loss snapped Team USA's 12-match winning streak. Still, the U.S. can clinch a 7th straight World Cup spot when they host arch rivals Mexico next week in Columbus, Ohio. In Belgium, Usain Bolt won the 100 meters at the Diamond League finale. The 27-year-old Jamaican clocked a time of 9.80 seconds. Mike Rogers of the U.S. was second, followed by Bolt's compatriot Nesta Carter. Earlier this week, Bolt hinted he may retire after the Rio Olympics in 2016. And now to update our top story, Australia's Conservative opposition has swept to power in a national election and ended 6 years of Labour Party rule. Prime Minister Kevin Rudd has now conceded defeat.
And that is an official wrap of our news. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, and have a great weekend.
Good night.
Hello everyone, it was mainly fine today. At 5 p.m, a subtropical ridge was bringing generally fine weather to southeastern China. Today's temperatures range from 25.4 to 30.7 degrees, and the current temperature is 27.4 degrees Celsius. So Freddie, how's the weather tomorrow? Mainly fine. Temperatures will range from 26 to 31 degrees. It will be mainly fine and hot in the following few days. Tomorrow's API is forecast at 25 to 90, and the pollution level will range from low to high. The maximum UV index forecast for tomorrow will be about 10. Now, here's the latest global weather update. Showers in Shanghai, cloudy in Xiamen. Sunny in Guangzhou and Macau. Cloudy in Beijing and Seoul. Rain in Ho Chi Minh City and Manila. Thunderstorms in Kuala Lumpur and Singapore. Sunny in New Delhi, rain in Karachi. Sunny in Cairo, sunny intervals in Nairobi. Sunny in Brisbane, sunny intervals in Melbourne and Auckland. Sunny in Toronto, cloudy in New York. Sunny in San Francisco and Los Angeles. showers in Paris, Frankfurt, and Zurich. And that's the weather. Have a great evening.